Reading 78 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 3. Great Animal House, May 17, 1947. The body and the different minds that act on it. 2. Last time when we were speaking of the different minds that can control the physical body of man, the following passage was read. Quote, I want to explain to you that the activity of the human machine, that is, of the physical body, is controlled not by one mind, but by several minds, entirely independent of each other, and having special functions and spheres in which they manifest themselves. This must be understood first, because unless this is understood, nothing else can be understood. End quote. Now, as I said, when I heard this the first time, I realized that I had always thought we had only one mind, and probably you think the same. That is, you conceive of yourself having one mind, controlling the body, and have never thought that you have more. Actually, you have 7 minds. These minds act through the 7 centers in man and can control the working of the physical body. First, we have 5, so to speak, ordinary minds acting through the 5 ordinary centers. Intellectual mind acting via intellectual center. Emotional mind acting via emotional center. Sex mind acting via sex center. Moving mind acting via moving center. Instinctive mind acting via instinctive center. And second, we have 2 super minds with which we are not in touch, save under exceptional circumstances, when personality is passive. These minds are higher emotional mind acting via higher emotional center, higher mental mind acting via higher mental center. These latter 2 centers each speak in a special language that is not understood by lower centers. This is the reason why we find, say, in Holy Scripture, many strange compositions that can only be understood psychologically and have no meaning if taken literally. In the Bible, the creation of man at the beginning and the judgment of man at the end are in the language of higher emotional center. Now, as was said, we have to understand that different minds control us, and that unless we can understand this, we can understand nothing about ourselves. This teaching, or as it is called, this work, is self-study by means of following a definite system of self-observation. That is, we are told what to observe in ourselves and what to separate from. To begin with, we have to observe centers in ourselves and notice how they work in quite different spheres and see things quite differently. Intellectual mind sees things quite differently from emotional mind. Sex mind sees things quite differently from both emotional mind and intellectual mind, and so on. But let it be said now that actually the 3 centers in the lowest compartment of the human machine need not be opposites and can combine and so form a triad. That is, active force, passive force, and neutralizing force can be conducted by each alternately in conjunction with sex center, moving center, and instinctive center. But it must be emphasized that this does not apply to the other centers, and that the teaching as given to us so far only speaks of sex center, moving center, and instinctive center as capable of forming a triad and not being opposites. That is, of being able to relate themselves together in such a way that each one conducts one or other of the 3 forces. Now let us, by way of comment, notice a few points about centers that can be viewed by trained self-observation. Each center has its own sphere of activity. The work that moving center can do is quite different from that of intellectual center. It is possible to observe that when you are in one center, you are not necessarily in another also. A decision made in one center does not have any power in the sphere of power of another center. Now it is true that we spend most of the day in a vague, unfocused state in which a stream of mechanical, inner talking and fantasy goes on endlessly. This is called being between centers. When we are in attention, we are in a center. But one center does not know another. They are different minds. Their modes of doing things are quite different. A harmonized man, a man number 4, knows the difference of different centers and stands, as it were, in the midst of them and can speak to them all. But as we are, we do not possess this inner state of being, which belongs to our further development and is definitely a higher level than we are at. The developed man, the man needed today, the level we strive for, is not the usual one-center man, whether number 1 or instinctive man, or number 2 or emotional man, or number 3 or intellectual man, but man number 4, and that is the general aim of everyone in this work. For in man number 4, all centers are accessible to him, according to his circumstances. Now, each center has its own truth. So there is not one truth, but the truth of each mind, and the whole makes up truth. I said that a harmonized man, a balanced man, knows and understands the language and needs of the centers. So he knows which center to use at the right time and gives, as it were, what properly belongs to a center. That is, the letters, the impressions, go to the right address. But G compared man as he is, that is, man asleep in himself, ordinary man, one-sided man, one-center man, man not yet awakening, man driven by outside forces, man-machine. Such a man G compared with a big business office in which sit 3 big bosses in different rooms. They do not know one another, and all business communications come through an uneducated secretary who lives in a little office with 2 or 3 standard reference books. She does not even know what the business house is for. She sends the incoming letters, impressions, up to the house, just as takes her fancy, and the bosses cannot make head or tail of most of them. That is, what should have gone to one center goes to the wrong center, and so on. This is one of the pictures that has been given in the original teaching of the work, of the state of ordinary mechanical man, that is, man or woman asleep. Now, the paper having been read, let me speak of what it is all about. It is necessary to bring things down to a certain level for us to take things in. In the first place, do you begin to see you have different centers, and also that they tend to work as opposites? Each center has its own hunger. Have you seen from yourself that you have different hungers? That should make you reflect that you are not one person, but many persons. There is the hunger of instinctive center, the hunger of sex center, and more difficult perhaps to notice, the hunger of moving center. That is, the desire to make something or take exercise. There is also the hunger of emotional center, say, to be appreciated, and the hunger of intellectual center, the hunger to know. All these hungers are different. In balanced man, each does not dominate and exclude the others. For balanced man stands in the midst of the hungers of different centers and does not go only with one. This is the harmonized or balanced man. Do you think you have already reached this stage, this level of being? I can assure you that if you think so, it is nothing but a very complacent picture of yourself that will only be destroyed by sincere self-observation. A man or woman who feels that as they are all right, and even better than others, such people are asleep in themselves and to themselves. In short, they are asleep. Now, this work is about awakening, not about continuing in the general sleep of humanity.